Hey, family. Thank you once again for tuning in to another episode of Living Your Life Without Limits. I'm Shannon Jackson, and today we're talking about the quiet quitter versus the quiet termination. Stay tuned. You don't want to miss it.
Wake up, everybody. Let's elevate your mind. Live your life without limits. No more wasting time. Don't forget.
Miss Sahar, thank you so much for coming on Living Your Life Without Limits. You know, I am fanning out over here. First of all, I want you to know that.
You're going to make
people
blush,
fan
Shannon.
over celebrities and they fan over that. I fan over thought leaders and mentors like yourself that really help shape us in a very positive way. So I just want to say I appreciate you for taking time, especially on your busy schedule, knowing you have so many things. So it's an honor to have you on the show.
Thank you so much, Shannon. I'm really humbled by your kind words. Thank you so much. I'm loving that I'm here. So
Thank you. So this show, actually, I read, you wrote an article for Forbes magazine. I know you're a contributor of Forbes as well as official member of the Forbes Coaching Council, which is highly esteemed and worthy of you being there. But when I read your article, I thought we need to discuss this, not just from the quiet quitter aspect, but the quiet leader. So what kind of prompted you to want to create this article?
the main focus of my business is leadership, especially, and I know leadership is just a term that people throw around, leaders, leadership. And the sad part is that people kind of equals or balance the same meaning as a manager or a director or an executive in a company as a leader. But in my book, leadership is not a title, is not a position, and it's not something that you have on your business card. Leadership is a journey. It's something that comes from inside. It's a choice that we make to lead people or to inspire them, no matter what. I have seen throughout my work, I have seen leaders on an assembly line. They are better leaders than the executive of an organization. It's about how we pull people together. That being said, I specialize in cross-cultural leadership, looking at the different cultures of us as human beings. And just before I start, culture is not only race and ethnicity and color and religion, but color is actually the lens that we see the world through. So every group has its own culture that has to do maybe with age, could be disability, it could be sexual orientation, it could be, ethnicity, of course, race and religion, but it could be also thoughts, culture of thoughts, diversity of education. So every group has a culture, and that's very important when we look at leadership, at the diversity of ages, disabilities, genders, and all that. So we can have a full hold on who are we leading. The reason why I did Quiet Quitters is that when COVID hit, it choked and shocked all of us.
Absolutely.
We were thrown, off balance, all of us.
I agree.
And what people don't realize is whatever our life was before COVID, whatever we knew, whatever we learned before COVID is absolute.
Absolutely.
Totally absolute.
Absolutely.
We all went through overwhelm, anxiety, micro losses, uncertainty, and we are still dragging some of these feelings. Either,
I agree.
Right? Either as
I totally agree with that. Yeah. It's like we're coming out, but we're not completely out. But something you said, it's like we're forever changed.
Yes.
We're forever changed.
What made me look at that is I'm a big believer in the study that Gallup has done in 2010 and then repeated it 10 years later about the engagement of the employees, about finding that only 28% of the US workforce is engaged. That means that 72% are either disengaged or actively disengaged. And actively disengaged is when they become toxic to the place. So it's not only they're not doing their work, but they're actually toxic to that. And I saw that
clocked out.
Right?
I call it clocked out.
Yeah, exactly. I call them the dead walkers. You know what I mean? It's just like, or walking dead or whatever, It's and it costs actually the United States every year between $4 and $5 billion between absenteeism, turnover, hiring new people, lawsuits. There are so many that is engaged with that we need to think about the gravity of the situation. But when COVID hit, like I said, a lot of things happened. People felt, especially the younger generations, the millennials and the Z, they felt like, there are other things in life than work. That maybe I'm not 100% defined by my work. That family is important to me too. Guess what? My company didn't really care about me. They didn't care what I'm going through. They let me go. They they either increased my work or took away my functions and threw me somewhere else. So there is a lot of things that happened that made people think, okay, there is something else here that I need to look at. And now people are becoming what we call the quiet quitters. And the rate is increasing. I mean, it was, I think, not a buzzword, but it was like the main issue that we suffered from in organization in 2022 was quiet quitting. When I first read the word, like how I opened my article on Forbes is, I thought quiet quitting is like people just leave without saying anything. You know how people just go and don't come back, And then I was that's not what it means. It means actually that people are still working. They're still collecting their paycheck, but they are disconnected from the place. Like they don't do anything extra.
Not productive.
They just color within the boxes of what is required from them, not even without them like thinking, maybe this is my creativity, this is what I can add, this is what I need to do for my company, this is because I belong here and I want my workplace to be the best. These feelings are not there anymore for the quiet quitters.
And it's in every industry.
Every industry across the board, every state, every city, every organization, and it's starting to be like an infection going around. Because of course, when you get that, and we're going to talk about the counterpart of it in a second, the quiet firing, the morale goes really down. And how do you expect someone that doesn't have a morale, that is elevated, that doesn't feel that they belong, that they don't feel their value? How do you expect them to give you productivity?
Correct.
So the most important part in quiet quitting here is that they don't, even if there is like a social event or something that needs to be done extra, people are not doing it. They say, hey, you pay me for this. This is what I'm giving you. That's fair. And in the beginning, I started saying, maybe it's fair to do that just to give you what you hired me for. And then I found, no, it has actually direct implications to, do you care about the results? Do you care? Do you know where we're going? Do you know how you are a big part of a big machine that if we don't really put all of us, that organization can go away and none of us is going to have a job,
Or benefits.
And that's why I'm like, it has like so many angles that we need to look at. And that's why I decided to write that article, because a lot of people are still thinking that quiet quitting is just leaving without saying.
It's very alarming, but it's so true. When I read the term, I was like, wow, because I was still on the Great Resignation term until your article came about. But you see it, even in the grocery store, I've seen examples where I've never before would go through a grocery line and see somebody on their phone texting and talking in front of me while I'm doing my exchange. It's very common now. and in so many other areas, healthcare and all these different things. But my question then becomes, it's here. How do we get to the root of it? Is it more on the employee's perspective to solve it, or the leaders' problem? How do we get to the root of that? Because we're here now. They're taking this stand, which I agree, and I've seen it. But if multiple people are quitting, where does the problem lies to come up with a solution? Is it more, do we look at the leader, or do it the employee, or is it really a combination of both?
Well, so there are, in my book, when I want to look at solutions, I always look for the root of the issues. Because if we don't look at the root and we just deal with the symptoms, we put a Band-Aid.
Exactly.
And a Band-Aid will eventually fall, and it gets worse, and we don't do anything about it. And that's what's going on now. Band-Aids are put, all over and over and over, and they keep falling, and the problem gets worse and worse. And I predict that it's going to get worse before it gets better. So I started doing some digging and some research, like with NYU, some papers, Gallup research, and I found out that actually the disengagement really started before even the pandemic. The pandemic just put it front and center.
Yes.
In a lot of workplaces, they found out, I think more than 60% of people at work feel that they have to conform to what is perceived as organizational culture, meaning that they have to fit within a box, even if it's not them. Like someone worried to carry their natural hairstyle, or a gay employee that is worried to put a picture of his partner on his desk, or her partner on the desk, or their partner on the desk. A mother not wanting to say that she has to take her kids to daycare, or say, I need an hour off to go and pick my child. Where people they feel so stressed that they have to conform to what the organization is expected from them, that they are stressed and overwhelmed. And once we're stressed and overwhelmed, we have cortisol in our brain, which is the stress hormone. Everything is up, our heart rate is up, our blood pressure is up. It's like we are in a war, status. And when we are in that war, we cannot think. We cannot have logic. Our brain doesn't work that way. Our brain that doesn't calm down. This is what we call the sympathetic nervous system, where we are like ready to fight. So our brain cannot do two things at the same time. We cannot be prepared for war and at the same time think logically and analytically. And that's what we don't do. That's what we don't understand, that if employees are hiding who they are for fear of being labeled under something, we don't have productivity. So now people in their mind, they go this way. You want me to hide who I am? I cannot be who I am. You don't make me feel I belong. You don't make me feel accepted for who I am, not who you want me to be. Then I'll give you the minimum possible.
I agree with that. I totally agree. I think where many organizations, because I go out as well with organizations, where they miss it a lot is they don't get buy-in from their rank and file, be it the employers or the people in the field, the people at the ground up. So they don't create a voice where they can have input and engagement. At one point, hospitals were moving to shared governance. You know what I mean? That was a big thing in healthcare. I come from healthcare, shared governance with everything. But it's more than just a tag word or a few people. It's really an individual connection.
Absolutely.
And I think that's what I'm hearing you say, that employers that create an environment where I can be who I am as Shannon with my hair or whatever it is that moves me will be very different than Tom or whomever else. But as a collective, if we incorporate those things in the culture and everybody understands the mission, maybe we'll be more successful with it. You know what I mean? Kind of do the tide of a turn, because I agree with you. The rate of there's no loyalty from either side right now. It's almost like, like our politics, right? The red and the blue never come together. And it's like, how are we going to heal as a country? No matter where you are, if we don't come to common ground. So we're seeing it in the work culture. So I think you have stated that very well and brought out some of those. And we got to get from being a Band-Aid to actually solving the problem.
To the root of the problem.
Exactly.
You know what, Shannon? Maybe it's my medical background. We used to say pus means knife, meaning if you have an abscess that has pus, surgery. You open it, you clean it up so it doesn't come back. Versus giving antibiotics. It goes away now, but it comes back worse. So you asked what are the solutions. So actually you hit the nail on the head. So I'm going to give you some numbers, some percentage to understand how grave this is for organizations. So in a Harvard Business Review, Yoshino and Smith report, they actually surveyed 3,000 employees at more than 20 large firms. And this is the numbers that came out. 66% of employees felt their sense of self was undermined. 66%. Let that sink in. Wow. 51% felt that their opportunities were limited by the organization. So if I feel I'm not going anywhere, why should I bother? It's like if you have a child and you keep telling them, you will never be good at that. Do you think they will ever be good at it? Absolutely not. 50% felt their sense of commitment decreased as a result. 50%.
Wow.
Okay, so there is a problem there. There is a problem there. They just feel like if I follow certain rules, I'm going to be accepted. And we need to remember, we keep talking about authentic leadership, but we're not giving the space for these leaders that are employees to grow into authenticity. If they have to hide who they are, how do you think that will work for the organizations? And I'm very passionate about that because I'm DEI by background. I always love there is equity and equality, not just equality, but equity comes before equality. What are we giving these people? What development are we giving them? What opportunities, what education are we giving them? Of course, stress, frustration, feeling rejection, even social acceptance has to do with our brain. That's why we go into fight, flight, and freeze. We go into survival mode when we are socially rejected. And social rejection could be someone not listening to you or telling you don't know what you're talking about. Or maybe, oh, okay, fine. There are even people from certain ethnicity that don't hang around with their same ethnicity because they don't want to be clumped together under a certain label. How do you want people working in an environment like that, basically a hostile environment, give you productivity? It doesn't make sense, and people don't seem, or organizations don't seem to understand that their number one asset, it's not their buildings, it's not their budgets, it's not the money coming in. It's your people. It's your employees. I have never, as an organization, we have three kinds of customers: internal, external, and maybe regulatory agencies, right? Like government agencies. The first type of customers that you have are your internal employees. I have never seen external customers happy if your internal customers are not. It doesn't happen. It doesn't happen. So this is number one. The number two, there are three parts to the equation here: employees, managers, and organizations. Now, on the other side of quiet quitting, there is a new term called, it's not very new, called quiet firing. Mm-hmm. So quiet firing are basically managers that fail to give or to provide adequate coaching, support, career development to an employee that results that the employees get pushed out of the organization. Kind of a laissez-faire leadership, or they make their life so miserable that the employee doesn't have any other choice than just leaving. Or you want to quite fire me? Fine, I'll quite quit. And it becomes a tug of war, like who's going to outperform the other. Yeah. So imagine people, having a toxic and miserable experience, they get squeezed out of where they are. And organizations, when they have turnover, when someone quits to rehire someone in their position, it's anywhere between 12 to 18 months salary of that position. That's a lot of loss. And that's why we need that to address that. And you know what? Some managers or directors don't have the intention to quite fire people. They're just absent because they're disconnected. Again, their managers told them that, like, I was doing a coaching session lately, and we were talking about challenges they have. And one of the managers said, I don't know why people are not accepting change. We tell them what they do and they should do it. And like my eyes went big and I'm like, okay, don't you think that, first of all, any change management, 80% of it is human. 20% is systematic. It's not the other way around.
Right.
So if you don't engage them and you get their buy-in, that change will never happen.
You have to have buy-in.
So the quiet firing that the managers or directors do, why do they do it? Because maybe they don't share the right goals with the people. And remember what they say, you don't plan, you plan to fail. So they don't meet, they think performance evaluation is a yearly event. Performance evaluation, especially with millennials and younger generations. Remember, this is a generation that grew up under helicopter parents. So they need constant coaching. They need instant gratification.
Constant.
They might not be, and by the way, I'm just saying generalization here. I'm not saying that every single person, the millennials are like that. I'm not stereotyping. Yes.
Correct.
They're not really linear thinkers, but they are very creative. They are the highest educated generation in the United States. They feel they paid their dues, with paying a lot of money for their education. So they expect their manager to be the coach. When they lose that, they leave. And then we label them as not having loyalty as they jump from one job to the other. No. If you don't give them what they expect, they will leave. Or they will quite quit. So when COVID aggravated that is when COVID hit, no one knew what to do. So basically the employees were left on their own. No goals, no guidelines, no development, no training, and now everybody basically tried to survive on their own, the way they found it was good for them. And that's what aggravated the situation, that they they didn't have frequent conversations, meaningful conversation about their progress, about how you doing? Just a question. How is your family? Is everything okay? How can I be of assistance? And this what was really missing, because everybody was like so centered in what's going on in their own nucleus of family, and some of the managers failed to give the employees the support they needed so they can success. And they don't do this meaningful conversation till today. Now, I see a lot of organizations are pushing really back for everybody to go back to work. And a lot of people are quitting. Even when they go to a position with less money, so they don't have to be 100% time at the office. They believe that, hey, there are researchers that said that productivity went higher when we were hybrid, when we commuted from home. So that's the second part of it. The third part of it are the organizations. And the organization, I'm gonna give you a new term. It's called quiet hiring. So we have quiet quitting, we have quiet firing, and now the organization have what we call quiet hiring. Quiet hiring for an organization it's an expression that means a way to obtain new talent without hiring new employees. So everybody thinks we're going into a recession. We're going to we don't know what's going to happen. Big tech company are laying off thousands and thousands of people. So they know that they have new needs in certain areas, like maybe IT data sharing or something, So they know they need to hire 8 people, for example, right? But they know hiring 8 people is going to take them all of 2023. That means they're not going to meet their goals at the end of 2023. So what do? They pick people that do maybe data analysis for your sales department or for your marketing department. So they pull them from these departments and they create a new department for the new skills without hiring anybody. And now all these departments are missing the help and the support that they actually needed. And they are signaling also a message to these departments, you're not important.
That's true. And it's kind of coming around full circle, because anytime you deplete one area and leave that
teeter-totter, right?
There, like robbing Peter to pay Paul, the result of the whole outcome goes down. Exactly. And you see it in all these different areas. I mean, it's interesting with the dynamics. So what would you say today as one of the final thoughts to leave? How can we bring the two together? Because it's going to take not just the employee.
No.
Like you said, beautifully said, it's going to take the leader, because no one wins, especially an organization, and your customers, whoever they may be, don't win when you have a lot of turnover, because there's a learning curve. We know that very much, a lot of research, but we've seen it firsthand. And for a leader as well to constantly be in a void where you're overstretching the people that are there. So how do we get the two on the same page? What would you recommend as we're closing the last thoughts on here? How do we stop the bleed of the quiet quitter and the quiet firing, or as I call it, the quiet termination, to kind of get together, to get at the conference table to see how can we work, if possible, a win-win? And I know it's going to be different for each organization. We know that, but just what would you suggest for our listening and viewer audience that maybe they are business people that listen to us, that may be tuning in? What recommendations or advice would you give them today? Especially small businesses that struggle with a lot of other issues. Can't afford to have a bad mass.
Exactly. So like the issue has 3 main angles, the solutions has to come from the same 3 angles.
Very good.
Okay. It's like when we have the gender, I want to call it gender discrimination, like females, males, or whatever. They throw it on the female and say, hey, you should do this and you should do that, right? But it's not only on them. It's the women leaders or the female leaders and the organization and their male counterpart as well. So when we look at a solution, if we look from only one angle, we definitely fail, because we have other factors. So we need to look at it from a broader lens on how the employees themselves need to do something, the managers and directors need to do something, and the organization need to do something. And we can, in my book, one of the biggest things that we can offer in an organization is what we call psychological safety. Psychological safety is when we make sure that every single member of a team feels safe, not only physically, but psychologically, emotionally, physiologically and everything. Meaning that I am okay sharing an idea that might be controversial. I am okay to say maybe the way we have been doing it might not be the most effective one. I am okay to speak up my mind. I am okay to show who I am without fearing of retribution. That's what psychological safety is giving that space. We keep saying, oh, we'll give them a seat on the table. We give them, what does that mean? How does that look like? For the organization, they have to turn the lens inward. What does it mean? It's not only enough to give a seat on a table. You need to give them a voice, and that voice needs to be heard. Managers can do that frequent meetings. Make sure that they deal with every person as a person. Employees are not a quota. Employees are not employees' numbers or social security number. They are human beings that have human beings that depend on them. The solution is going back to the basics, dealing with people as human beings. So organizations need to start applying more diversity, more inclusion, most importantly, more equity before they can even say that they have equality. Equity means that they need to bring everybody that has been historically discriminated against to the front line, like everybody else. Then they can apply equality. Without equity, we will never have equality. Like dealing with every person, how do they like to be recognized? Because every person, we have different motivations, different recognition. And you might think, yeah, we are too busy to do that. Well, you are too busy to get out of business, because you are going to get out of business sooner or later. It might take a year, it might take 10 years, but the writing is on the wall. Organizations keep hiring people based on a quota, and they don't think about the bias in the people that hire, right? So they don't take measures, and they keep saying, we want someone that is culturally fit. Culturally fit in my book means same old. We're not changing anything. We're not bringing diversity into anything. I rather have culturally add in a new employee that, of course, I'm not denying that their values have to be aligned with the organization, their vision and mission has to be aligned, but maybe they bring something new blood. Listen to them, include them. Most importantly, managers have to accept people for who they are, becoming inclusive leaders. Having also inclusive behaviors. Inclusive behaviors meaning that if I'm in a meeting and someone is hijacking the meeting, I will, thank you so much, now I want to hear from this one. Make sure that the silent people are talking. Making sure, for example, that a male team member doesn't overshadow a female or taking away her idea and taking credit. We have to make sure, that everybody is dealt in an equitable way, that we don't have bias. Like if we have a new position that has a lot of traveling, we don't offer it to that female employee because she has a family and probably she's not going to be able to travel. Offer it to her and see what she's going to say. Give her that development and opportunity piece. Okay. So managers need to become coaches. They have to have goals. They have to be deal with their teams as human beings, know a little more about them, maybe being culturally competent, like knowing, not necessarily knowing everything about different cultures, but knowing that there are different cultures and we should be okay about it. Give your people the tools to develop. Be there for them. If someone wants to listen to them, get their opinions, even if it cannot be applied, explain why.
Exactly.
And you might be in emergency sometimes, so you go full speed, fine. When you calm down, get their buy-in. Their buy-in will get them even, hey, I'm listened to, I belong. Psychological safety make people feel not only accepted, but they feel they belong. Only when they belong to a workplace, they're going to give their best, because as human beings, we all want to be part of something bigger than us. Belonging will let every employee wake up in the morning, say, it's going to be a great day at work today. This is my home. This is my place.
And that's what we want them to do. I mean, you have said a mouthful that I'm really hoping resonate with people because feeling safe and feeling belong and valued is so important to employees. And when they feel respected in their own skin, in their own talent, and who they are, they will lead for you. I've seen it happen so many times.
Yep.
So you have said some key things, and I'm hoping that many people that tune in will take heed and listen, because you dropped, as they say, some nuggets on us today. And I thank you.
And Shannon, the last thing I'm going to say is know the strength of your people.
Yes.
And make them use this strength. Because when we use our strength and we perform better, we get better results, we become euphoric. You know, we become like, our brain feels that we are celebrating, and it's a great feeling because the happy hormones are released in the brains, right? The happy chemicals. And now the body wants to replicate that. And that's why rewarding your employees, even with a thank you email going to everybody else. Rewards don't have to be money.
Absolutely.
You know, make people feel euphoric, you know, and they will give you their heart and soul. You know, use their strength. No one likes to be used in their weaknesses. This is a main thing that I always coach leaders on.
Excellent. Well said. I want to thank you again, Sahar, for your time, your wisdom, and experience that you brought to this very important subject. And I want to leave with a final note to anyone that's listening, be it an employee or employer or an organization, that go back and look at the culture. Because what she's summing it up with the three parts, there is the organization, there's the leader, and the employee that makes up the culture. And if you are an organization that's struggling with a quiet quitter problem, then you need to go back and talk to the employees. Sit down and listen. Sometimes we don't listen. Yep. We just talk. Listen with an open ear to hear what they have to say.
And mind.
And mind and heart. And be open-minded and invite all people to the discussion, no matter what color they look at, culture, or they ideas, because everyone has something that they can contribute, and see where people are. And leaders, it goes back to the fundamentals, as Sahar so eloquently put. We got to start back coaching, not just talking to them or at them, but discussing with them and bringing them in. So I thank you again, listeners, for tuning in today and viewing audience. And again, I'm so honored, Sahar, for you to come. She has so much wealth, and we're going to steal her back again a little bit later on.
I'll be happy to.
And she always has something that feeds our minds and feeds our hearts as leaders. And I appreciate her and respect her so much, and honored to have her here. So here you have it, family. We at Living Your Life Without Limits, our motto is to motivate, educate, and inspire not only you to live your life without limits, but in your work environments, breathe life into your organizations. So remember, as I sign off today, remember to love yourself. Take care of yourself. Because guess what? You are absolutely worth it. Thank you for tuning in, and I will see you next week.